The bold and the beautiful, secrets are currency, and love is frequently entangled with treason, ambition, and fear. This time, the secret belonged to Hope Logan, and it was one that could shatter families, enkindle old battles, and upend the delicate balance between the Logans and the Forresters ever. Hope had always tried to be the moral compass in a city that thrived on temptation, but when she goggled down at the small white test in her pulsing hands inside her cabin, the faint pink lines told a story she wasn't ready to partake. The baby growing inside her wasn't commodity she could advertise with joy and festivity. It was complicated, wrapped in late-night admissions, gashes, and a moment of vulnerability that should no way have happened. She loved Liam, or at least she believed she did, but their marriage had been strained, worn thin by misconstructions and his constant pull toward Steffi. And also there was Thomas, violent, devoted, and insolvable to ignore. The memory of that night with Thomas visited her, not because it was forced or cruel, but because it was honest in a way she hadn't allowed herself to be. She had felt seen, asked, and understood, and that verity scarified her further than any reproach could. When Hope realized she was pregnant, her first instinct wasn't excitement, it was fear. She calculated timelines in her head over and over again, replaying dates, exchanges, and stolen glances. However, also maybe she could breathe again, wrap the verity in an arc and present it as a blessing, if the baby was Liam's. But if the child belonged to Thomas, the fallout would be disastrous. Brooke would defend her son, but indeed Brooke would struggle with the optics of it all. Ridge would be furious, torn between fidelity to his son and the ineluctable drama it would bring to his marriage. And Steffi, strong, perceptive Steffi, would not vacillate to question everything. Hope knew that in Los Angeles, especially in the Forrester route, nothing stayed hidden for long. Yet she chose silence. She chose to tuck the ultrasound appointment into the middle of a busy workday, wearing large sunglasses as she slipped into a private clinic across city. She asked the croaker about maternity testing with a voice so steady it surprised indeed her, and when the croaker gently explained her options, Hope jounced as though she were agitating a fashion line rather than the future of her life. The reason she hid the gestation wasn't just fear of judgment, it was fear of losing control. For so long, Hope had been at the mercy of other people's opinions, Liam's waffling heart, Thomas's compulsive devotion in the history, Brooke's battles with Taylor. This baby, still uncertain its origins, was hers. In those early weeks, when nausea hit her in the mornings and she locked her office door to breathe through the dizziness, she felt a fierce protectiveness bloom inside her. She wasn't ready for the boardroom whispers or the aching aesthetics. She wasn't ready for Liam's questions or Thomas's hopeful eyes. She demanded time to suppose, to decide what kind of future she wanted before the world demanded answers. Meanwhile, Liam tasted commodity was out. He noticed the way Hope squinched when he reached for her, the way she sounded distant during regale with Beth. He attributed it to stress at first, condemning the pressure at Forrester Creations and the constant competition between Hope for the future and the couture line. But when he set up an antenatal vitamin bottle put away into the restroom press, his heart skipped. He didn't defy her incontinently. Rather, he carried the dubitation. Like a fragile glass, doubtful whether to set it down or smash it open. Liam's history with maternity query, his own complicated family dynamics made him cautious. He flashed back the pain of not knowing where he stood, and he stressed history repeating itself. Thomas, on the other hand, felt a shift in the air. He'd been trying to keep his distance, esteeming Hope's marriage, fastening on Douglas and his designs. Yet there was a connection between them that refused to fade. When Hope avoided his aspect. During a design meeting, when her hand artificially brushed against her stomach before she caught herself, Thomas felt a spark of suspicion. He didn't know the verity, but he tasted that commodity monumental was unfolding. For Thomas, the possibility of a child with Hope was both a dream and a peril. He'd worked lifelessly to rebuild his character after once miscalculations. After being labeled unstable and manipulative, however, he knew it could either redeem him or condemn him ever, if this gestation was his doing. Hope's secretiveness strengthened when she eavesdropped a discussion between Brooke and Ridge about Taylor's return to Los Angeles. Taylor's presence always complicated matters, especially when it came to their children. Hope imagined the captions, the gossip columns assuming about a love triangle revived in the coming generation. She couldn't bear the study of her child being reduced to a plot in someone differentless war. So she told herself she was guarding the baby by staying silent. She skipped wine at family feasts and criticized it on a health kick. She listed meetings to avoid intimate exchanges. She rehearsed grins in the glass, persuading herself she could carry this alone. The turning point came during a charity fete at the Beverly Hilton. Dressed in a flowing gown that subtly concealed her changing figure, Hope felt the walls closing in as flashbulbs popped around her. Steffi approached her with a knowing expression, opining on how radiant she looked. It wasn't an blameworthiness, but it felt like one. Latterly that evening, Liam pulled Hope onto the sundeck, the megacity lights spangling behind them. He asked her directly if there was commodity she demanded to tell him. For a moment, the verity floated on her lips. She imagined the relief of concession, the weight lifting from her casket. But also she imagined the questions. When did this be? How could you be sure? Do you love him? And she swallowed the words. She told Liam she was just tired, overwhelmed. He jounced, but mistrustfulness dallied in his eyes. Why does she hide this shocking gestation? Because in a world where every mistake is amplified, Hope fears that the verity will define her in ways she can't control. She fears being seen not as a devoted mama or a talented developer, but as a woman who betrayed her promises in a moment of weakness. She fears that if the baby is Thomas's, it'll tether her to a man whose love has always been complicated, occasionally dark, indeed if he has changed. And she fears that if the baby is Liam's, the shadow of mistrustfulness will ever loiter, poisoning their fragile conciliation. As weeks passed, the physical reality of her condition came harder to mask. Brooke noticed the subtle changes first, the gleam, the fatigue, the way Hope artificially shielded her waist. Brooke brazened her gently, mama to son, asking if there was commodity she wanted to partake. Hope's eyes filled with gashes, but she shook her head. She wasn't ready to involve her mama, knowing Brooke's defensive instincts could enkindle a disagreement. Yet Brooke's dubitation meant the timepiece was ticking. The ultimate irony was that the gestation, born from query, began to clarify Hope's heart. In quiet moments alone, she admitted to herself that her connection with Thomas had been real, not just a lapse in judgment. She also conceded that her marriage to Liam had been erected on a foundation of repeated remission and moping instability. The baby forced her to defy trueness she had long avoided. Hiding the gestation bought her time, but it also insulated her, creating distance between her and everyone she loved. When the maternity test results eventually arrived in a sealed envelope, Hope goggled at it for hours before opening it. That piece of paper held the power to reshape her entire world. Her hands quivered as she read the name published beneath the word father. In that moment, the reason for her secretiveness formed. She had demanded to know the verity for herself before facing anyone additional's response. Whether the father was Liam or Thomas, the decision of what to do next had to be hers. In true Los Angeles fashion, the secret couldn't stay buried ever. A lost medical bill, a rumored discussion eavesdropped by the wrong person, or maybe a dramatic concession in the Forrester boardroom. Inescapably, the verity would explode into the open. But until that moment came, Hope cleaved to her silence like a guard. She wasn't just hiding a gestation, she was guarding her autonomy, her child, and the fragile stopgap that she could navigate this storm on her own terms. In the dramatic shade of the bold and the beautiful, where love and treason cotillion in equal measure, her secret came the quiet twinkle beneath the chaos, staying for the right moment to be heard. The silence Hope wrapped around herself came heavier with each passing day, like the thick marine subcast that rolls in from the Pacific and refuses to lift. In the spangling, enduring world of the bold and the beautiful, secrets no way stay buried, but that didn't stop her from trying. However, the longer she kept the gestation hidden, the more fiercely she induced herself she had a good reason, if anything. It wasn't just about reproach presently. It was about timing, influence, protection, and overall, survival in a family dynamic where every emotional misstep came security. After entering the maternity results, Hope didn't rush to tell anyone. Rather, she folded the paper precisely, slid it back into the envelope, and locked it inside the bottom hole of her office at Forrester Creations. The name published there, athwart, inarguable, echoed in her mind. The verity was no longer abstract. It had a face, a voice, a history. Still, the news would come with relief, but also dubitation. If the father was Liam, Liam would count backward. He'd flash back the nights they argued, the distance between them, the moments she dithered before kissing him. He'd ask if there was someone differently. And indeed, if the child was biologically his, emotionally there would still be a shadow. That shadow had a name: Thomas. Still, the consequences would be explosive, if the father was Thomas. Thomas, who had spent times fighting to prove he'd changed. Thomas, whose love for Hope formerly framed on preoccupation but had evolved into commodity, steadier, quieter. A child between them wouldn't just be a baby, it would be an endless bond. And Hope knew that revealing that verity would crump like a lemon inside both families. So she awaited. Her body, still, refused to cooperate with her strategy. Morning sickness struck unpredictably. She kept crackers in her bag and peppermint tea in her office. During a design meeting, she had to excuse herself suddenly, leaving a room full of directors swapping ganders. Tales began circulating, first about stress, also about illness. No bone. Guest gestation right down, but in Los Angeles society, enterprise spreads faster than fact. Meanwhile, Liam grew decreasingly unsettled. He noticed the emotional wall Hope had erected. When he tried to talk about the future, she diverted the discussion to work or Beth's academy conditioning. He told himself he was being paranoid, that the ghosts of his constant triangle with Steffi were hanging him again. But one night, when he reached for Hope in bed and she gently turned down, commodity inside him cracked. "Are you still in love with me?" he asked still. The question pierced her. She was in love with the idea of stability, with the dream of a united family. But she was also in love with possibility. And possibility was dangerous. Thomas, on the other hand, felt drawn toward her again, nearly magnetically. He'd been careful, giving her space, fastening on Douglas and rebuilding trust with Ridge and Steffi. But there was a wimpiness in Hope's eyes when they worked together, a participated silence that spoke volumes. One autumn, as they reviewed fabric samples alone, their hands brushed. The electricity was inarguable. Hope pulled back snappily, guilt submerging her face. Thomas noticed. "What's going on?" he asked gently. "You're carrying commodity." If only he knew how non-fictional that statement was. Hope's secretiveness wasn't just about avoiding battle, it was about delaying heartache. She knew that once the verity came out, someone would lose. Either Liam would feel betrayed beyond form, or Thomas would feel shut out of a life-changing disclosure. And there was also Steffi to consider. Steffi, who had eventually set up peace with Finn and stability for her children. However, Steffi would fiercely cover her family, but she'd also question Hope's motives. If the baby was Thomas's, old battles would resurface, and Hope would formally again be cast as the busybody. Brooke tasted the storm brewing long before the first lightning strike. Mates always do. She possessed Hope in the design office one evening, her voice calm but establishment. "You're hiding commodity," Brooke said. "And whatever it is, you don't have to face it alone." Hope nearly confessed also. The words quivered on her lips. But she allowed. About how snappily Brooke would condemn Thomas, how she'd march straight to Ridge, kindling another chapter in their endless war. Hope couldn't risk turning her gestation into a battleground. Because that was the core of it, she didn't want her baby to be her armament. As weeks passed, the physical changes came inarguable. Acclimatized jackets were replaced with flowing outlines. At a high-profile fashion exercise, a journalist asked if Hope was debuting a motherliness-inspired line. The question hit like a poke. Cameras zoomed in, empty for evidence. Hope laughed it off gracefully, but inside she shocked. The timepiece was running out. The real fracture came when Douglas innocently placed his hand on Hope's stomach during a family regale and asked if there was a baby in there. Children's smell effects grown-ups tried desperately to hide. The table went silent. Liam sat. Thomas goggled. Hope forced a smile and changed the subject, but the damage was done. Latterly that night, Liam brazened her. "You're pregnant," he said. Not a question. A statement. Gashes welled in her eyes. Silence was no longer an option. But indeed also, Indeed, standing at the edge of concession, Hope dithered. Because revealing the gestation meant revealing the timeline. It meant explaining the night everything changed. It meant admitting that her marriage had fractured long before anyone realized. Why did she hide the shocking gestation? Because she demanded space to decide what kind of future she wanted before other people made that decision for her. Because she was tired of being pulled between two men whose history mandated her fortune. Because she wanted one thing in her life to belong solely to her, at least for a little while. And because deep down, she knew that once the verity surfaced, nothing would ever be the same. In Los Angeles, love stories are infrequently simple. In the macrocosm of the bold and the beautiful, they're indeed less so. Hope's secret wasn't just about maternity. It was about identity. Was she the pious woman, fighting for her marriage? The woman who set up unanticipated connection with a reformed man? Or was she simply a mama trying to cover her future child from getting contributory damage in a generational feud? The answer, like the gestation itself, was growing stronger by the day. And when the verity eventually explodes, as it always does, it won't just change Hope's life. It'll ripple through Brooke and Ridge's fragile bond. It'll test Liam's capacity for remission. It'll challenge Thomas's redemption bow. It'll force Steffi to choose between dubitation and compassion. Until also, Hope holds the secret near, feeling the steady memorial beneath her heart. A memorial that occasionally silences weakness. Occasionally it's the only power a woman has left. She had managed to delay the ineluctable for weeks after Liam brazened her. Rather of confessing completely, she admitted only half the verity. Yes, I'm pregnant, she had rumored, gashes sliding down her cheeks. Liam's response was an admixture of shock and conditional joy. He pulled her into his arms at first, relief submerging his face. But also reality crept by. He pulled back slightly, searching her eyes. When? He asked. That single word carried so important weight. Hope gave him a timeline that was technically true but strategically vague. She didn't lie, but she didn't clarify moreover. And Liam, hopeless to believe in them, accepted it. For now. But mistrustfulness is a patient thing. It doesn't vanish simply because you want it to. It lingers in quiet moments, in sideways ganders, in the way someone hesitates before answering. Thomas set up out else. He wasn't told. He tasted it. During a design review at Forrester Creations, Hope felt faint under the bright exchange lights. Thomas caught her before she could fall, his hands artificially steadying her. In that detail, intimate moment, he felt it, the defensive urgency in her body language, the way her hand moved automatically to her stomach.